Mike Henderson stared at his electric bill in disbelief, his morning coffee growing cold as the numbers swam before his eyes. $347. For a modest two-bedroom house where he lived alone, kept the thermostat at a reasonable 72 degrees, and even switched to LED bulbs throughout. Last month, it had been $168. The month before, $173. This has got to be a mistake, he muttered, reaching for his phone to call the electric company, when a familiar whirring sound from outside caught his attention. Through his kitchen window, he could see his neighbor Karen maneuvering her pristine white golf cart around the side of his house, heading toward his detached shed with the confidence of someone who belonged there. Mike frowned. Karen lived 3 houses down in the upscale Willowbrook subdivision in a house easily twice the size of his own. They'd exchanged pleasantries over the years. She was the type who organized block parties and headed the homeowners association with military precision, but they'd never been what anyone would call close. Curiosity getting the better of him, Mike stepped onto his back patio and watched as Karen parked her golf cart directly beside his shed. Without so much as a glance toward his house, she opened the shed's side door, a door he distinctly remembered locking, and emerged with an extension cord. His extension cord. What the hell? Mike whispered, watching in stunned silence as Karen plugged the cord into the outlet he'd installed inside the shed for his lawnmower and tools, then connected it to her golf cart's charging port. For a moment, Mike stood frozen, trying to process what he was witnessing. Then Karen did something that made his blood pressure spike. She pulled out her phone, settled into a lawn chair she'd apparently brought for this purpose, and made herself comfortable for what was clearly going to be a lengthy charging session. This wasn't her first time here. Mike marched across his yard, his bare feet slapping against the dew-covered grass. "Excuse me, Karen." She looked up with the serene expression of someone who'd been caught doing nothing more scandalous than reading a magazine. "Oh, hi, Mike. Beautiful morning, isn't it? What are you doing?" Karen gestured toward her golf cart as if the answer should be obvious. "Charging up purely here. She was running a bit low after my round at the country club yesterday. With my electricity, from my shed." "Well, yes." Karen's tone carried a note of impatience, as if Mike was being deliberately slow. "You weren't using it, and I only need a couple hours. It's not like it's costing of anything significant." Mike felt his jaw drop. "It's costing me $347 this month." Karen waved dismissively. "Oh, that can't be right. Golf cart batteries barely use any power at all. How long have you been doing this?" "Just since spring started. March, maybe. April?" Karen shrugged. "Honestly, Mike, I don't see what the big deal is. It's just a tiny bit of electricity, and I'm only borrowing it when you're not home." "Borrowing?" Mike's voice rose an octave. "You broke into my shed to steal my electricity." "I didn't break in," Karen replied primly. "The door was unlocked that first time. I've been very careful not to disturb anything. If anything, you should thank me. I've been keeping an eye on your property while you're at work." Mike stared at her, speechless. In 38 years of life, he'd never encountered such brazen entitlement delivered with such sweet reasonableness. Mike thought he'd made himself perfectly clear during their confrontation at the shed. He'd explained in terms a 5-year-old could understand that Karen needed to stop using his electricity immediately. She'd nodded, made sympathetic noises about misunderstandings, and promised to look into other charging options. That lasted exactly 3 days. On Thursday morning, Mike's doorbell rang at 7:30 a.m. Through the peephole, he could see Karen standing on his porch with her arms crossed, wearing a pink visor and the expression of someone who'd been gravely wronged. "Mike, we need to talk," she announced the moment he opened the door. "Good morning to you too, Karen. I've been thinking about our conversation the other day, and I really don't think you're being very neighborly." Karen pushed past him into his living room without invitation. "I mean, what's a few dollars of electricity between friends?" Mike closed the door slowly, counting to 10. "Karen, we're not friends. We're neighbors. And those few dollars have been adding up to hundreds." "Well, that's really neither here nor there," Karen said, settling onto his couch as if she lived there. "The point is, I've been using that outlet for months now, and suddenly you want to change the arrangement. It's very inconvenient." "The arrangement?" Mike's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. "There was no arrangement. You've been stealing from me." Karen's face flushed pink to match her visor. "Stealing is such an ugly word, Mike. I prefer to think of it as neighborly resource sharing. Call it whatever you want. It stops now." Karen stood up, smoothing down her golf skirt. "Well, I suppose we'll just have to agree to disagree. I'll try to be more considerate about timing, but I really do need somewhere to charge Pearly. The outlet in my house is just so inconveniently located." Mike watched in stunned silence as Karen let herself out, apparently considering the matter settled in her favor. By Friday afternoon, she was back. This time, she wasn't alone. Mike came home from work to find not one but 3 golf carts plugged into various outlets around his shed. Karen had apparently brought friends, Two other women who looked like they'd stepped off the pages of a country club catalog. "Oh, Mike," Karen called out cheerfully when she spotted him. "I hope you don't mind. Linda and Susan needed charging too, and I told them about our little arrangement." Linda, a platinum blonde with enough jewelry to fund a small country, waved enthusiastically. "Karen says you're just the sweetest neighbor, letting everyone use your electricity." "I never agreed to." "Now don't be modest," Susan interrupted, her voice carrying the practiced authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "It's so refreshing to meet someone who understands community spirit." Mike looked from face to face, each one beaming at him with the radiant confidence of people who'd never been told no in their lives. "This has to stop. All of you need to unplug your carts and leave. Now." The three women exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their opinion of Mike's mental state. "Oh, honey," Karen said with the tone she might use with a confused child. "They're already half charged. It would be wasteful to stop now. We'll be out of your hair in just a few hours. Besides," Linda added, "it's not like you were using all that electricity anyway." Mike felt something snap inside his chest. Not his temper, exactly, but his faith in reasonable discourse. These women had moved beyond entitlement into some alternate reality where his property belonged to them. Mike spent his weekend researching. He called his homeowners association, documented everything with photos and timestamps, and even consulted with a lawyer friend about his options. By Monday morning, he had what he thought was a solid plan. The HOA meeting was held in the community center's beige-walled conference room, presided over by board president Jim Crawford, a retired accountant who treated every minor dispute like a corporate merger. Mike had requested 15 minutes to present his case. "So let me understand this correctly," Jim said, adjusting his reading glasses as he reviewed Mike's carefully prepared documentation. "Mrs. Patterson has been using your electrical outlet without permission for approximately 2 months." "That's correct. And now she's brought other people." "I'm sorry," Karen interrupted from across the table, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine hurt. "I really think Mike is blowing this way out of proportion." Mike turned to stare at her. He'd been so focused on presenting his case that he hadn't noticed Karen slip into the meeting. "Mrs. Patterson," Jim said formally, "you'll have your chance to respond." Karen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I just don't understand why Mike is being so hostile. I mean, we're neighbors. We're supposed to look out for each other." "By stealing electricity?" Mike interjected. "I wasn't stealing anything." Karen's voice rose, then immediately dropped back to a wounded whisper. "I asked Mike if I could borrow his outlet, and he said it was fine. Now he's trying to make me look like some kind of criminal." Mike's jaw dropped. "That is not what happened. I caught you red-handed." "Mike has been very aggressive with me," Karen continued, her voice growing stronger. "He came storming across his yard, yelling and using profanity. Honestly, I'm a little afraid of him." "That's complete nonsense," Mike said, but he could see the board members exchanging glances. Karen had somehow transformed herself from entitled thief to victim in the span of 30 seconds. "I think," said board member Patricia Wells, a stern woman in her 70s, "that neighbors should be able to work these things out among themselves. Perhaps some clearer communication is needed." Jim nodded sagely. "Mrs. Patterson, going forward, you should ask permission before using anyone else's utilities. Mr. Henderson, perhaps a little more neighborly tolerance might help resolve this situation." Mike left the meeting feeling like he'd been gaslit by a committee. Tuesday brought a new development. Mike's phone rang while he was eating lunch. "Mr. Henderson, this is Detective Rodriguez with the local police. We've received a complaint about harassment from one of your neighbors." Mike's sandwich turned to sawdust in his mouth. "Harassment?" "A Mrs. Karen Patterson says you've been intimidating her, using threatening language and generally making her feel unsafe in her own neighborhood. She's been stealing my electricity for 2 months." "Sir, that would be a civil matter. What I'm calling about is the alleged harassment. Mrs. Patterson says you've been following her, taking pictures of her, and shouting at her in public." Mike closed his eyes. The pictures were his documentation. The following was him catching her at his own shed. The shouting was him asking her to stop stealing from him. "Detective, I can explain." "I'm sure you can, sir, but I need you to understand that if we receive another complaint, we may need to look into a restraining order. I'd suggest you keep your distance from Mrs. Patterson and let the civil courts handle any property disputes." After the detective hung up, Mike sat in his kitchen staring at his latest electric bill, $412. His lawyer friend Tom called him back that evening. "Okay, I've looked into this," Tom said. "Technically, yes, what she's doing is theft of services, but the amounts involved are small enough that most prosecutors won't touch it, and civil court would cost you more in legal fees than you'd recover. Plus, now that she's filed a harassment complaint. So she gets to keep stealing and I'm the bad guy? Welcome to the wonderful world of neighbor disputes. My advice? Install a lock on that outlet or disconnect it entirely." Mike hung up and walked out to his shed. Karen's golf cart was there again, plugged in and charging. A note was taped to the shed door. "Thanks for being so understanding. Your grateful neighbor, Karen." Standing there in the fading daylight, watching his electricity flow into Karen's golf cart, while she sat in her air-conditioned house planning her next round of golf, Mike realized that reasonable solutions weren't going to work. Some problems required more creative approaches. Mike spent his lunch break at Tractor Supply Company browsing the livestock section with the focused intensity of a man on a mission. The sales associate, a weathered farmer named Earl, couldn't have been more helpful. "You're looking at the Gallagher M150, Earl explained, patting the compact electric fence charger. "This little beauty puts out about 1.5 joules. Won't kill anything bigger than a mouse, but it'll sure get their attention. We use them for keeping cattle in line." "What about smaller applications?" Mike asked carefully. Earl's eyes twinkled with understanding. "Well now, I reckon this unit would work just fine for keeping varmints away from places they don't belong. Very educational for creatures that don't respect boundaries." Mike left the store with a charger, some insulated wire, and a new understanding of why farmers always seem so satisfied with life. The installation took him most of Saturday morning. Mike ran the wire along the inside of his shed, carefully connecting it to the outlet that Karen had been using. The beauty of the system was its simplicity. Anyone trying to plug into his outlet would complete the circuit and receive a memorable lesson in property rights. He tested it with a screwdriver wrapped in electrical tape. The sharp crack and blue spark were deeply satisfying. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Perfect golf weather according to Karen's usual schedule. Mike positioned himself at his kitchen window with a cup of coffee and waited. At 9:47 a.m., Karen's white golf cart came puttering around the corner of his house. She parked in her usual spot, retrieved his extension cord from the shed, and began her familiar routine. Mike held his breath. Karen plugged the extension cord into the outlet. The result was everything Mike had hoped for and more. Karen let out a shriek that probably registered on seismic equipment, jumping backwards so violently that she knocked over her lawn chair and stumbled into a rose bush. The extension cord flew out of her hand like a snake, and Karen stood there for a moment, staring at the outlet in shock and disbelief. "What the hell?" she screamed at the shed, as if it had personally betrayed her. Mike watched as Karen gingerly approached the outlet again, this time using a stick to poke at the extension cord. Another satisfying crack and spark sent her stumbling backwards again. "Mike Henderson." Karen's voice carried across the neighborhood like an air raid siren. "What did you do to your outlet?" Mike opened his kitchen window. "Oh, hi, Karen. Is there a problem?" "Your outlet shocked me." "Really? That's strange. It's been working fine for me." Karen marched toward his house, her golf outfit disheveled and her perfectly styled hair now resembling something created by a Van de Graaff generator. "You did something to it. You booby-trapped your own shed." "Now, why would I do something like that?" Mike asked innocently. "Maybe you should have an electrician look at your golf cart. Sounds like there might be a short in the system. Don't you dare try to gaslight me, Mike Henderson. I know what you did." "I'm not sure what's wrong, Karen. Maybe you should stick to using your own electricity from now on." Karen's face turned a shade of red that clashed magnificently with her pink visor. "This is assault. This is attempted murder." "Murder?" Mike couldn't help but laugh. "Karen, if I wanted to murder you, I wouldn't use livestock equipment." The moment the words left his mouth, Mike realized his mistake. Karen's eyes lit up with predatory glee. "Livestock equipment. You just admitted it. You rigged an electric fence to assault me." "Karen, I'm calling the police. I'm calling a lawyer. I'm calling the news." Karen was practically vibrating with righteous fury. "You can't just electrocute people because you're too cheap to share a little electricity." She stormed back to her golf cart, which she then had to push home by hand since it was still uncharged. Mike watched her go, still clutching his coffee mug. He'd solved the immediate problem, but something told him Karen wasn't going to take this lying down. The phone started ringing 20 minutes later. The first call was from Detective Rodriguez again. "Mr. Henderson, I'm going to need you to come down to the station. Mrs. Patterson is claiming you assaulted her with some kind of electrical device." "Detective, she was stealing my electricity. I have months of documentation." "Sir, we can sort this all out of the station. Can you be here in an hour?" Mike arrived at the police station to find Karen already there, sitting in the lobby with a bandaged finger held dramatically aloft and giving her statement to a young officer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "And then he admitted it," Karen was saying. "He said if he wanted to murder me, he wouldn't use livestock equipment. It was a clear threat." Detective Rodriguez emerged from his office looking tired. "Mr. Henderson, let's talk." In the detective's cramped office, Mike spread out his documentation, photos of Karen at his shed, timestamps showing her regular visits, copies of his escalating electric bills, and records of his attempts to resolve the situation through proper channels. "So you're saying Mrs. Patterson has been stealing electricity for 2 months?" Rodriguez asked, flipping through the photos. "Yes, sir. I asked her to stop multiple times. Out through the HOA, I contacted my lawyer. And then you electrified your outlet. I installed a livestock fence charger to protect my property from unauthorized use." Rodriguez studied the photos more carefully. "These timestamps, she's been coming to your shed almost daily?" "Yes, sir." The detective was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Henderson, I need to ask you to wait here." 10 minutes later, Rodriguez returned with Karen and the young officer. Karen's expression had shifted from righteous indignation to something approaching panic. "Mrs. Patterson," Rodriguez said formally, "I need to ask you about these photographs showing you at Mr. Henderson's property without permission." Well, he said, "I called. Ma'am, theft of utilities is a misdemeanor in this state. The evidence here suggests you've been stealing electricity valued at over $200, which could bump this up to a felony." Karen's bandaged hand dropped to her side. "But he electrocuted me. He protected his property with a device designed to deter trespassing. You were trespassing and attempting to steal utilities at the time you were injured." Mike watched as Karen's entire demeanor changed. Gone was the confident woman who turned every situation to her advantage. In her place sat someone who was finally realizing that actions had consequences. "I want to speak to a lawyer," Karen whispered. "That's your right, ma'am. But I should tell you, Mr. Henderson would also be within his rights to press charges for theft." After Karen left with a court date and a citation, Detective Rodriguez turned to Mike. "For what it's worth, you probably should have called us about the theft first. But I've seen your documentation, and it's clear you tried to resolve this reasonably." "Am I in trouble for the fence charger?" Rodriguez shrugged. "You have a right to protect your property. Just, maybe post a warning sign next time." Mike drove home to find his neighbor Jim from across the street waiting in his driveway. "Mike, thank God you're back. You need to know what's been happening." "What do you mean?" Jim's eyes were bright with excitement. "Karen's been going door to door all afternoon trying to get people to sign some kind of petition against you. Says you're dangerous, that you tried to kill her." Mike's heart sank. "And? Well, that's the thing. She knocked on my door first, and I told her I'd seen her sneaking around your shed for months. Been wondering what that was about. Then she went to the Johnsons, and they said the same thing. Turns out half the neighborhood has been watching her steal your electricity." Mike stared at him. "Seriously?" "Oh, it gets better. She went to Linda's house, the blonde with the big jewelry. Apparently, Linda got tired of Karen's drama and told everyone at the country club about her little charging arrangement with you. Word is Karen's been asked to take a break from the golf club until this all blows over." Over the next week, Mike watched as Karen's carefully constructed social world crumbled around her. The HOA board, embarrassed by their earlier dismissal of Mike's complaint, sent Karen a formal letter requiring her to cease all unauthorized use of other residents' property. The story spread through the neighborhood with the speed of gossip, and suddenly everyone remembered their own encounters with Karen's entitlement. The court case never materialized. Karen's lawyer apparently took one look at Mike's documentation and advised her to drop the assault charges in exchange for Mike not pressing theft charges. On Friday evening, Mike was watering his garden when he noticed a for sale sign going up in Karen's front yard. She emerged from her house as the real estate agent finished installing it, spotted Mike watching, and for a moment their eyes met across the suburban battlefield. Karen looked away first. Mike's next electric bill was $143. He kept the livestock fence charger in his garage just in case.